Howdy folks, and before we get started on today's video I have a small announcement to make, a sort of bijou announcement-ette, as it were. Don't worry, I promise never to use that phrase again. This weekend I'm going to be at the PC Gamer Weekender in London, Saturday and Sunday. Well, the event's on Saturday and Sunday. I'll be there on Saturday. It's at the Old Truman Brewery. Don't worry, don't expect you to remember all of this. Details of the event are in the video description down below. I've actually been invited along, as has Rita Gamer, by Wargaming, because they're going to be showing off World of Tanks and World of Warships. But it's not just Wargaming, there's all kinds of other games on display, including first look at Dark Souls 3 and Warhammer 40,000 Eternal Crusade. So if you're in London this weekend with nothing to do, why not pop down to the Old Truman Brewery for the PC Gamer Weekender, and with a little bit of luck I might see you there. Right, on with the show. This is Invader Zim, and he's in the Japanese Tier 6 cruiser, the Aoba. I've just unlocked this ship again for myself, and I have to admit I really didn't like it at first. And when I say at first, I'm talking about back in the closed beta, and for that matter the open beta, but I grew to love it. It's probably fair to say that the Aoba, while a good ship, isn't quite as good at Tier 6 as its successor is, the Miyoko, at Tier 7, but, well, then again, there aren't many ships that are as good as the Miyoko. Nevertheless, the Aoba is a decent ship. It's the first Japanese cruiser to get 203mm guns. It's got 6 of them mounted in 3 turrets, 2 forward and 1 aft. And the firepower's not bad, even if the turrets do turn very, very slowly indeed. Of course, as a Japanese cruiser, it's also got a very nasty sting in the tail. Torpedo launchers, port and starboard side. The limitation of these torpedo launchers, however, is that they can only fire in the rearward facing arc, so beware if you're chasing an Aoba and she turns away from you. That doesn't necessarily mean she's running away. Watch out for torpedoes. This ship packs a fearsome punch with its torpedo launchers. The Japanese actually only built 2 of these ships. They were supposed to be the 3rd and 4th ships in the Furutaka class of cruiser. Furutaka, of course, also present in World of Warships as the Japanese Tier 5 cruiser, so it follows on naturally at Tier 6 you're going to get these Aobas. The Japanese Navy weren't particularly happy with the design of the Furutakas, however, so they called for some modifications, including a seaplane catapult launcher, which you can see there just forward of the rearmost turret, and double gun turrets. Now this, of course, added a lot to the weight of the ship, and the weight was all high above the waterline. And this, of course, didn't do the Aoba any favours in the stability department, but the old girl did see extensive and heavy fighting all throughout the course of her war career. She fought in the Battle of Cape Esperance, the Battle of Savo Island, and the Battle of the Coral Sea, and in almost every occasion she took heavy damage and had to undergo extensive repairs. But she did survive right up until almost the end of the war, when she was finally sunk in Kure Harbour in 1945 and reduced to an unsalvageable wreck. One thing I do have to say about Invader Zim here, and you've probably noticed yourself, is he really does like his high explosive spam. He's actually, and it's quite surprising, he's actually firing high explosive at that Murmansk, and he's managed to score a citadel with it. So, well, you know, like I say, if it's stupid but it works. Now that's a lot of enemy ships, and he's right up front here. Enemy ships to port and enemy ships to starboard. Doesn't matter which way he turns, he's going to run into trouble. Starts putting some shots out at the enemy Aoba and the enemy New York. Starts taking them under fire, and yep, that is a Minakaze. He's just been spotted by the friendly dive bombers and torpedo bombers, and he's probably figuring, well, screw it, I've been spotted by the aircraft anyway, I may as well take some shots at them. He's gonna have to deal with that Minakaze. He probably already has torpedoes in the water. Luckily, he has high explosive loaded. Luckily for him, not so lucky for the Minakaze. And there's the torpedoes. Wow, that was a very, very badly aimed spread of torpedoes. Fires blind. Oh, second spread of torpedoes, much better. And, yeah, he's going to take one of them. The Minakaze's disappeared. Where is he? Where is he? There he is. In and out of the smoke screen, disappears again. Gun's almost reloaded. Come on, get them pointed at the target. Fires blind. Sinks the Minakaze. Well, he's lost half of his health. Things could be better, but they could be substantially worse. That first spread of torpedoes from the Minakaze was pretty terrible. The second one, much, much better, and he did take one torpedo hit. For the moment, he's got some hard cover between himself and those two battleships over there. Now, they are just inside torpedo range, but, well, no, I mean, well, then again, you never know. You know what battleships are like, but probably not. Instead, he takes some shots at the Aoba, and he's really getting hemmed in from all sides by enemy ships here. Doesn't really want to get any closer to those two battleships. And he has switched back to armor piercing, but who's that taking shots at him? It's that Wyoming. Wow. Look at that. That Wyoming is actually on the other side of that mountain range formed by that little island. He's actually managing to lob shots right over the saddle between the two mountain peaks. Well, nothing you can do about that. And it seems like Invader Zim's in a little bit of an agony of indecision here. He doesn't really know which way to go. The odds are not fantastic no matter which way he turns. He's got his armor piercing loaded again and cruisers, so starts taking a shot at those. But then his attention keeps coming back to this Murmansk. And he's in range, and most of his guns are pointing in this direction, but check out the aircraft warning indicator. Yep, here they come, torpedo bombers. He's got his fighter airborne, and he triggers his defensive fire cooldown, and that completely screws up that torpedo attack just in the nick of time. And his anti-aircraft guns, while not nearly as good as an equivalent tier American cruiser, they're good enough to completely take out both that wave of torpedo bombers and the dive bombers that were following them up. And they're going to wreck those fighters as well if they're not careful. So he managed to, I mean, it was a close call. He saw them just in time, but he did the right thing and he managed to escape without taking any damage. And there is the Furious Taco. Ooh, armor-piercing citadels. Well, they're not as impressive as battleship citadels, but you need to... Oh, there's another one. It all starts adding up, doesn't it? Checking around him, see what's going on. Doesn't pay the tunnel vision. Wants to get this guy. No, he's manoeuvring hard. Look at the ship heeling over to starboard there. Oh, another citadel. Come on. Actually, two citadels. And... oh, what a shot. He's got him. He was actually a little bit lucky there because his rear turret was the only one that actually had a shot. But his rear turret was the one that was loaded, so he got him. Oh, hang on a minute. Yep, those enemy carriers really want you dead, Invader Zim. He turns, but check out this trailing torpedo. Now watch this. There, he's dodged it, but he oversteers. So close, and he almost pulled it off, but no, he does take 7,500 damage from that trailing torpedo. Spots an Omaha burning, takes a cheeky shot at him, hoping to be the one to claim the kill before the fire puts him on the bottom, but nope, the Omaha's down. And yes, his anti-aircraft guns are still blazing away. Luckily this time, they're not aimed at him. It's a torpedo strike on that Wyoming, who is desperately trying to get out of there and coming under concentrated fire from all of those enemy ships to the rear. And Invader Zim's had enough of this. He said, screw it, full speed to the engines, pedal to the metal, Billy Big steps, we're getting the hell out of here. You guys keep shooting at the Wyoming, just don't shoot at me. That would be lovely. And the Wyoming is probably not going to make it out of there. Friendly torpedo bombers going overhead. Plenty of business for them up at that end of the map. That Wyoming is on his last legs. But Invader Zim is taking full advantage of the enemy team's attention being focused on that poor battleship and doing what he can while getting the hell out of dodge. Only scored a couple of hits as well. Oh, cruiser. And there's that enemy Aoba again. Shots out. The Wyoming's about gone. Come on. No, he's gone. The Wyoming's dead. Reloaded. Adjusts his aim. Lobs some shots over the island. Come on. Yep. Nailed him. 2 citadels. Sank the Aoba. Oh, and again, it doesn't really matter which way he goes. He's going to run into trouble. Aircraft coming in. But they're not coming for Invader Zim just for a change. There's a Murmansk and a friendly destroyer up ahead. We're making an end run on the enemy carriers. And that's great news because the carriers are going to be panic firing at those guys. And they're not going to be worried too much, at least not immediately, about Invader Zim. So while their attention is focused elsewhere, he's going to do what he can to get as much damage in as possible. That Cleveland is coming to the rescue of the carriers, and he's focusing his fire on the Murmansk. It looks like they've taken the destroyer down, and for the moment the Cleveland is outside of gun range, and that's great news because it means Invader Zim can give his full attention to this enemy carrier. Now he is scoring a couple of hits, but he doesn't have a very clear shot. That Murmansk is not going to stay alive for much longer. He's running into a real hornet's nest over there. The Murmansk up there is actually running into the same problem that the Farragut, who I don't know if you saw there in chat, was actually complaining that he really screwed his attack up. Those two carriers are making excellent use of the terrain, and they're basically hiding behind those islands to deny anybody shots and, more importantly, torpedoes at them. So, unable to take shots at the carriers, the Murmansk is, look at the damage he's doing to this Cleveland. Now that Cleveland is about to die. Invader Zim gets a shot out, tries to ninja the kill, Cleveland disappears. He disappeared because he put the fire out, so we can't see him anymore. But then he pops up again. That's because he's just started shooting, and he's shooting at Invader Zim. His first salvo doesn't come close, but the second salvo is already in the air. Invader Zim puts some shots out, starts manoeuvring. Now remember, the Cleveland has a lot of guns, and he's dead, but those shots are still in the air. The Cleveland has a lot of 156mm guns. Look at the amount of firepower that thing can kick out. But the shots do travel very, very slowly. So it would have been kind of embarrassing if he managed to sink Invader Zim from beyond the grave, but he got away with it. He does not have a lot of health left, however, and those two carriers do still both have a lot of health. And I think it's fairly safe to say that Invader Zim has their complete and undivided attention, but both his catapult fighter and his defensive fire cooldown are back up. Now the carrier's trying to sucker him into using his cooldowns on those fighters, but he doesn't fall for it. He's paying attention to the torpedo bombers, and I think what's actually happening here, because he still doesn't use either his catapult fighter or his defensive fire cooldown when these dive bombers come in. Instead he's just relying on his anti-aircraft guns, and he takes a couple of hits, but it's minimal damage, and he's managed to citadel that carrier, and the dive bombers don't set him on fire. And I think what he was doing was saving his cooldowns for the torpedo bombers, but the torpedo bombers, look, you can see them on the map there, they're not actually going for him. I think they made a strike. Yep, they definitely made a strike on that battleship to his rear. So he's still got both of his anti-aircraft defensive cooldowns available, and he's closing in on those carriers. He's lost sight of the Japanese, but there's the Independence. He's recovering his torpedo bombers and managed to make a successful strike on the battleship without any losses, but he's still got both of his defensive anti-aircraft cooldowns. He's switched to high explosive, attempting to put their flight deck out of commission by setting them on fire. And it looks like the battleship is engaging that carrier as well. He's lost sight of the Japanese for the moment, but we know where he is. He's tucked in around the side of that island over there to the right. He hasn't managed to put the Independence's flight deck out of commission, and the Independence is trying to reverse out of the way. He's never going to get away. It's all going to come down to what they do with their aircraft. Now, where did that Zuiho go? He's going to be just over there to the right. Until he pops up. There he is. Invader Zim just fires and forgets these torpedoes. He doesn't even pay any attention to where they're going. He's that confident that he's got this guy. So I'm actually going to switch to an external camera view so you can actually see the destruction as he continues pumping high explosive fire into that Independence. And yep, there they go. Now the Indy's put the fire out and he's launched his aircraft. Invader Zim's AA gunners are already opening up on the dive bombers, so he launches his catapult fighters, triggers his defensive fire cooldown, takes a hit from the dive bombers, they've set him on fire. He extinguishes the flames. Dive bombers are empty, returning to base. The carrier's burning. He concentrates his fire on the torpedo bombers who still haven't made their attack run, and he starts shooting them down, but there's nowhere for them to get a clear attack run here. They're going to have to do something soon, or there's going to be none of them left to get those torpedoes in the water. But with the defensive fire cooldown and the catapult fighters harrying them, look at the spread of those torpedoes. There was absolutely no chance they were going to hit. And, oh, the Aoba has torpedo launchers on the port side as well. And so he quite casually just sails straight up the middle, torpedoes to the left, torpedoes to the right, nails himself 2 carriers, and makes it look really, really easy. But let's not bake a cake just yet, because, well, we have a kind of a good news, bad news situation. There are only 3 ships remaining on each team, and Invader Zim's team does have the points advantage at the moment, but the enemy control 1 capture point, and they're about to take control of the other one. So unless they start sinking some ships, they can still lose this game. Now the good news is that Invader Zim's backup consists of 2 aircraft carriers, and there are 3 battleships on the enemy team, and that's real bad news for the battleships. But it's also real bad news for Invader Zim because he's in a cruiser with no armor, he has less than 5,000 health, and the enemy team has 3 battleships. So, it's all going to come down to what those carriers do. Can they whittle the numbers down? Yes, they can. They've just nailed one of the battleships. Unfortunately, it's going to be the last thing one of those carriers does, because those surviving enemy battleships are about to sink one of the carriers. So now it's 2 on 2. But on the bright side, Invader Zim is already in range of that Wyoming. He has his high explosive loaded. He's just cleared the island, and he's able to start taking shots at him. Also, that enemy New York cannot directly assist the Wyoming. He's on the other side of the island. He doesn't have a clear shot. Invader Zim's first salvo misses, not by much, but he's in a cruiser. The guns reload quickly. Doesn't really matter if your first salvo misses. It's not like you're in a battleship where if you fire with your first shot and it misses, you have to sit around waiting 30 seconds before you can try again. That Wyoming, however, reacts very, very well indeed. He's already turned around and starts shooting back, and this could be bad news. But no, well, that's battleship accuracy for you. He then takes a dive bomber strike, and Invader Zim is now in cover behind this island, but not before getting a second salvo away. Are they going to hit? Yes, they are. He hasn't set him on fire, however. It's not going to take many more shots to put this guy down. He's turning to avoid incoming aircraft. Shots out. That does look pretty good. That looks... it's good enough. And the New York has just run out of friends, which means he now has the undivided attention of every single one of those torpedo and dive bomber squadrons. Credit where credit's due here, though. That New York does a fantastic job of avoiding massed air attack from that friendly carrier. There's multiple waves of torpedo and dive bombers coming in, and, well, the thing about the New York, I kind of like the New York as battleships go. It is one of the more manoeuvrable of the battleships out there, and it's not that long either, although it is kind of fat. If I had to pick any battleship, of the ones that I've played at least, to dodge incoming aircraft, the New York would probably be it. The thing is, though, he doesn't know exactly where Invader Zim is, although he knows where he was, and he can't see the enemy carrier. Ideally, he wants to be heading in the direction that the returning enemy aircraft are heading, to try to close the distance and sink the carrier so he can turn around and deal with Invader Zim. But all those maneuvers he's being forced to undertake to desperately try to avoid all of these dive bombers and torpedo bombers means that he's not really going anywhere fast. And Invader Zim is closing the distance. Also, the carrier that New York is trying to nail down is an Independence, and he's substantially quicker than a New York. On the bright side for the New York, the carrier is running out of spaces to run. He's managed to chase him right up into the border of the map. And it's not going to be long before the carrier pops up into his view range. Unfortunately for the New York, that Independence is going to pop up into his view range at more or less exactly the same time that Invader Zim pops up behind him and is able to start taking shots any second now, while the New York is attempting to shoot down the dive bombers that are coming in. Shots out, shots from the rear turret didn't quite clear the headland, but the shots from the front 2 turrets all land on target. High explosive loaded. Didn't set him on fire. That looks like the dive bomber strike did. The New York uses his damage control ability to extinguish the flames, which means there's absolutely nothing he can do if he gets set on fire again. His rear gun turrets, however, are pointing in this direction, and he makes good use of them and does score a... well, it's only one hit. It could have been a hell of a lot worse. He really, really needed to sink Invader Zim without shot. Now, Invader Zim's got 3 shots at this guy while he's reloading the guns, and even worse for the battleship, there are torpedo bombers coming in. And that means the New York has to swing the ship around to face the incoming threat posed by the torpedo bombers, and that means he can't point his guns at Invader Zim anymore. And so Invader Zim is pretty much immune to fire from this New York for at least the next minute, and it's not going to take him that long to sink him. He's already burning. He hits him again and again and again. He scored 7 kills. There's the high caliber award. Shots out. Keeps punishing this poor New York, and with his final salvo, claims his 8th kill and sends him to the bottom. So that's Invader Zim showing us all how to Aoba. Now I don't have the post-battle results screen for this match once again, so I'm unable to show you exactly how much damage he did, but I believe it falls under the category of a metric arse ton. And that's pretty much it for today. I hope you enjoyed this replay. I certainly thought it was spectacular, and if you've got nothing to do and you're in London this weekend, maybe I'll see you at the PC Gamer Weekender at the Old Truman Brewery. Details, once again, in the video description. Hope you enjoyed the video, folks. As always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.